Okay, Mr. Ballin?
Yeah, I made a specific comment at that meeting cautioning the board to make sure you didn't set up a market for peddling these ordinance 2 fees. We have a situation up in Canyon Crest where there's ordinance 2 fees paid, plus they're now in bankruptcy. So who owns those rights, and are they going to be peddled off the property, going to be sold off the property? And the other thing is I think some of those ordinance 2 fees that were paid for on there are much lower fees than what you're charging now. So the board's going to take, or the water district's going to take a cut in income if you start allowing those transfers to non-ownership entities. So that was my comment at the time that this was passed.
That's what I'm talking about, my concern with the precedent, so.
Mallory, you have some comments for us?
No, that was, my understanding from the board meeting was just that. You guys didn't want the cross ownerships, which is why I brought it back to you, and we just didn't process it between us and the attorney's office, is because my understanding was exactly that. It couldn't happen. And so I needed your clarification before we process through, because where it's not specifically stated in the policy, I couldn't say, yes, this is it. That's not my job. I don't want that responsibility. So, but my understanding at that board meeting was, in fact, that this type of thing would not be allowed. So,
You know, I understand the circumstances, I'm conscientious of it, I understand what you're trying to do. I just think it opens Pandora's box, of course, and
Well, the whole
I
spirit
know,
of ordinance 2 fees.
that was my intent in that meeting. I think we go back and take minutes, watch the video. Was it one ownership to the same ownership?
Well, and that's what I'd like to have clarified then, because where we were the entity that paid the ordinance 2 fees, could we reapply, since we paid under that entity, and reapply for the transfer of those ordinance 2 fees to our same entity, different lot?
It's my understanding the ordinance 2 fees have always been treated as, you know, once they're paid for a property, they're kind of appurtenance to that property, attached to that property. And so, you know, as that property changes hands, the subsequent owners of that property would also own the water rights and ordinance 2 fees that were paid applicable to that property, impact fees, etc. And so, I mean, if the board was going to consider something as being proposed there as far as ordinance 2 fee ownership separate and apart from the property itself, I mean, is it possible? Potentially, but then I think we'd have to have additional paperwork as far as chain of title to show, like for this proposal here, as far as the property's now on its third owner since the ordinance 2 fees were paid, you know, a chain of title to show who owns the property currently, what's anybody who might impact it, any lien holders. I think it'd create additional paperwork, additional due diligence on the part of the district to process that sort of request, if nothing else.
I mean, that kind of defeats the whole idea behind what we were willing to do, because we don't want a developer to go back 10 years ago and say, oh, I had all of these unused ordinance 2 fees on this project, I need to get reimbursed or sell them off to here. So, I mean, I guess that doesn't answer your question, but
I think one of the differences though is if a meter or the line has been placed, that's one thing, because there's water available there. You know, someone could set a meter and you've got water. In this case, that's been removed.
yeah, but there's a lot of there's a lot of subdivision projects that don't use all their ordinance 2 fees. They either do away with lots like you've done, or they, you know, end up not building or whatever.
So what happens to that water then that's been deeded for that property that cannot be used on that property that we've paid for? Because my understanding is the ordinance 2 fees pay for that acre of water, is that correct?
No, that's not correct, is it?
For you to purchase the water for that
As
lot.
far as to provide the water.
To replace the water, right?
Yeah.
Yes, replace the water,
Future water rights.
future water rights, and that's what we spent the money for. and we've spent it, it's gone. And that was the purpose of ordinance 2 fees, is growth's supposed to pay for itself. See, so,
Well, Mary, originally ordinance 2 was to stick with that parcel, and it wasn't to be transferred. And with the intent of the meeting we had a few months ago, the intent was we're gonna stay with the same ownership, same parcels. Part of my understanding, when you come in and pay ordinance 2, the developer comes in and they're the ones that determine what kind of water usage they're gonna need. That's why they pay the ordinance 2 fee. That's the developers, based on what they're gonna build. The district relies on that. I think, as Rich said, the intent of that was ownership had to basically be the same, stay with the ground. I think we put ourselves in a position to have all kinds of these kind of scenarios to come up, and we're going to be hearing them every time somebody wants to take one and put it to a different parcel. I think we need to go back and tighten this document up so that it's understood by developers that this stuff, it stays with the parcel, it stays with the ownership of the ground, so we don't, every meeting we're not going through something like this. That was clearly the intent when we discussed this.
we really moved it, yeah.
And I think the staff fully recommends that we do that, because otherwise it's,
Opens Pandora's
or
box.
just,
And I understand that. I think it's, I think that my biggest concern with it is that, you know, if we had applied a week earlier, it wouldn't have been an issue, because the transfer of property wouldn't have taken place, and it just didn't happen that way. But, you know, a week or two, or whatever the small amount of time was that lapsed, is the reason that I'm standing here.
And I understand that, but you understand where we're coming from, I hope, too, that once we allow it.
No, I understand.
It's-
No, I mean, you've
it's
got
a
a policy,
precedent.
and
Yeah. We
I'm here to
can't
get clarification on that, so.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, if you wanna bring in chain of title and resubmit your application, have it, some other way, maybe we could look at it then, but the way it sits right now, I can't get in, you know, it doesn't fit in our policy, the way I understood the policy.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your consideration.
Okay.
Do we
Okay,
wanna,
look
do
for
we
a
wanna,
motion on Item 9.
do we wanna,
well, we need to clarify it, I think.
I think we probably clarified it, right? Do we have to do that formally, or?
Well, I mean, I think you've made it clear that what your intent was when the policy was adopted. I guess my personal preference would be that if that's the intent, is that maybe the board consider making a motion to give direction to me to tweak the language as necessary to clarify the intent of the board.
Will you have to rewrite that, will you have to rewrite that and bring it back in front of us, or just?
My preference would be to bring it back from the board to bless it, but that you just give me direction by motion to rewrite it, to make the necessary changes to make it consistent with the board's understanding and intent.
I'll move that we direct Eric to make changes to the policy with the understanding of what the board's intent was, and bring those changes back to us in a future date, so.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, second, all those in favor, raise your right hand, that's 4 in favor, 1 absent. Motion 9, solved.